there's not too many people that are still lingering around from about 10 years ago when I was first learning how to produce and was first going to Berkeley. But I bring that up because my first attempt at EDM, or what it would soon be known as, globally, was a track called Burn Dem. I was using a Raga Twin sample, and it was basically a really basic electro house track, bass house before bass house, basically. A super dirty, distorted bass line, saw wave, I think it was, and then a real, like a kick drum, a punchy kick that was very, very punchy, very hard. And that's pretty much it. That and some hi-hats in there. Real basic though, not real layered, not real technical. And essentially in the breakdown, it was that Raga Twins vocal and a lead line that I think was also a saw, and it was just basically a riser. I didn't really realize what I was doing back then, but that's essentially what it was. And when I think back to what that is or was versus what people like Henry Fong have been doing, I wasn't far off, and you'll see where I'm going with this in a minute. About 2 years later, I went to Point Blank, and I took a producing trance course. Even though I wasn't super into trance, I went the route of what is the hardest music or the most layered technical stuff that I think would be really cool to know how to make. Because if I could make that, I could pretty much translate that into anything. And that was trance at that time. I don't think they offered a dubstep course, because obviously that was a sound then that was blowing people's mind, because not a lot of people were at that time thinking to use LFOs and then Complextro and all of that. But trance was it for me. So in that trance course, I made 128 BPM, pretty much kind of a mix between a Deadmau5, Swedish House Mafia kind of track. A lot of plucks, 8th note or 16th note plucks actually, and my own vocals. And in that track, I think the lyric was "Meet me in Miami in the summertime," and it was kind of real, kind of early Swedish House Mafia, plucky. And then, in the breakdown, I introduced this really big, wide lead, which is where the Swedish House Mafia really shined through. And I wasn't even really necessarily super into them. It was just that this trance course covered different types of trance, and most people made uplifting trance, which was fine. And I can't even really remember why I went the route of more of, I think what that, at that time, that section of the course was labeled as kind of the Sander Van Doorn / Deadmau5 style trance, slower BPM. And I think it was because, once again, that same mentality lingered of like, what would be cool to make that I could move into other things. Well, if you're making 138 uplifting trance, that's pretty much its own thing. But if you're at 128 and you're learning how to do like plucks and things like that, that can lead into other things other than slower trance, like what we saw it go into, which was basically a huge boom of EDM, big room, progressive, and electro. So I say all of that because with those two tracks, something very interesting happened, and that was this kind of falling out, or kind of like not realization that I had, that I was way closer than I thought I was. And it was really only in my own mind that I was held back, or holding myself back. All of that was so close to other people and what other people were doing. It really is like, it's unfortunate that I didn't kind of just roll with that and stick with it. I couldn't get out of my own way. And although I kept producing and stuff, I took a route of kind of like more of like deep house and tech house, which was fine too. The real issue was, it really wasn't even so much about the sounds I was creating or how close I was to other people. I just really wasn't following through in the back end of things, which was finishing tracks, marketing them, trying to get them signed, and if they wouldn't get signed, not allowing the gatekeepers to keep me out, but rather saying, well, screw it then. I'm going to take $1,000 of my own money and I'll self-release it on, at that time, like all these cool distributors weren't even really out yet. So at that time it probably would have been like TuneCore or CD Baby. But I'll release it on there and I'll market it myself. But the other thing was too, at that time, you didn't really do that and the outlets weren't really there to do that. Things have changed so much in 10 years, it's incredible. But nevertheless, it was kind of just that idea of following through. So, because even in my deep house and tech house stuff, I was making it similar enough or close enough to other people that it could have been grouped together. And all I mean by that is like this stuff would have been played. Whether it would have been my Swedish House Mafia style stuff, my Henry Fong kind of reggae electro kind of stuff, or just pretty much deep house and tech house. That was actually the least original stuff that I was making. It was pretty status quo, and back then there weren't a ton of tutorials either. So basically, you used your ears and you looked at what presets Logic had, and you made it with that pretty much, or that's what I did. But yeah, I mean, the idea of following through and not doubting yourself is pretty important, because everywhere I was onto something, but I didn't realize that, and that's what sucks about it. You know, had I done the reggae electro stuff and put some money behind it to market it, it probably would have caught on. It probably would have hit in some aspect. Same thing with the Swedish House Mafia, Miami, tropical kind of stuff, because in that stuff I kept it pretty tropical, even though it was big room Swedish house kind of stuff, by using a lot of bongos and congas. So there was like, I made sure there was room in the mix for percussions. So it had this weird kind of like tribal house, but then big room house thing going on. I was way closer than I thought I was. And the only thing that held me back were the snobby opinions online that told me, well, you know, I've been doing this for 10 years or 15 years, so you, Mikey, as an early producer, you need to step aside. And, you know, it's just such a beast. So I really welcome you to not let other people's opinions about music production and in your own self get in your way and be in your way. Don't allow that, because you're way closer than you think you are. And really it's your own judgment and sort of that idea of diminishing returns, and also kind of the 80-20 rule that really can mess us up if we don't follow it or allow ourselves to be held back by not looking into these things. So try that and think about that as you're producing. These are kind of ways of overthinking so that you don't have to think when you're producing. You don't want to overthink the production process, but looking back on the last 10 years, I hope that there's some stuff here that can help you.